Rocket Stone Miners, I'm your host, Get Good Fox, and welcome to another deep dive and elite deep dive walkthrough guide. This is for the week of April 6th, 2023. So yes, this is the first deep dives of the new month of April. I'm going to be taking you through both the deep dive and the elite deep dive. We'll go over the mission conditions. I'll warn you about anything bad that could happen and then give you my recommendations of what you can do to bring home as many of those Matrix cores as possible. If you'd like to see me do this live with all the good moves and the bad moves combined, check me out on Twitch at GetGoodFox. But otherwise, let's get started with the deep dive. And our deep dive is going to take place in the Fungus Bogs. Isn't that delightful? Mission 1 is a difficulty of Hazard 3, and you are going to be recovering a data rack, so industrial sabotage, but you'll also have to kill a dreadnought. Expect the twins. So overall, this should feel like an ordinary Hazard 3 industrial sabotage and elimination. There really aren't any tricks going on here, so if you can do those on Hazard 3, you should be fine here. As some quick tips, when you fight the twins, try to do damage to them about evenly, because the way their healing mechanic works is the weaker twin will heal to catch up to the healthier twin, so if their health is similar, then you're going to really negate that healing effect. As far as the Caretaker goes, the Engineer is really good, and that's because the basic way you fight the Caretaker is to kill all of its additional enemies. Shoot down the robot arms, the shredders, drones, turrets, whatever. Then the Caretaker is basically defenseless and you can take your time beating it up. Yes, the robot arms will come back. You just shoot them a second time and they disappear for long enough for you to have plenty of peace and quiet to own it. Overall, Hazard 3 should not really be that big of a deal. You shouldn't need a very specific strategy to bring down the Caretaker. But let's go ahead and move on into Mission 2. Difficulty is raised up to Hazard 3.5. Your objectives will be to collect 7 quarks and 2 alien eggs, and one of the 2 alien eggs will generate a swarm. There is also a mutator in effect. It's regenerative bugs. The rule to this is that if a bug goes undamaged for 3 seconds in a row, it'll begin to regenerate its health at a rate of 5% of its total HP per second until it is healed, though if you damage it, it will interrupt the effect. That said, this mutator should not be the deciding factor on this mission because Hazard 3.5, there should not be enough enemies for this to matter, especially in the beginning of the mission. Any bug that you shoot should probably die. You won't be leaving like half-dead bugs anywhere. It probably won't go well for your turrets, though. The turrets that are protecting the minehead, the station that you're dumping your minerals into, they will probably wound bugs, be unable to finish them, and then the bugs will get away and regenerate. That said, it still shouldn't be the deciding factor. What could be, though, is the fact that you are doing a point extraction where the enemies get more and more aggressive over time, and the fact that the map is a little bit confusing. It's honeycombed with tunnels that look very similar. The way you can help to counter this is by hitting Control and then E on a tunnel that you're about to enter into. That'll give you a permanent waypoint, which can help to mark which tunnel you just went into to help reduce the probability of you constantly re-exploring the same place. Focus on getting the quarks as quickly as possible, and this shouldn't be a problem. That's going to take us into the final mission of the deep dive, though. Mission 3. Difficulty stays at Hazard 3.5. Your objectives will be to collect 225 Morkite and kill a dreadnought. It'll be the standard Glyphid dreadnought. However, there's 2 mutators in effect. You've got a shield disruption. This sabotages your shields. No shielding for all of Mission 3, but any damage from a hostile source is reduced by 30%. So that could be either enemies, or it can be something from like the environment, like poison gases. Doesn't protect you against friendly fire or falling damage, though. But you get Rich Atmosphere, which increases your movement speed by 30%, which is really, really nice. So, main tips here is that yes, it sucks that you don't have your shields, but you run really, really fast, and you can use that really high speed to evade the enemies. You should absolutely be abusing the Rich Atmosphere here. In addition to that, this is the last mission of the deep dive, so throw all of your nitra at it. No reason to hang on to your nitra, because the ammo packs, they don't just refill your ammo, they also refill your health, which is quite useful. When you fight the Glyphid dreadnought, the best thing to do is to use your enhanced speed from Rich Atmosphere to escape it. What you want to do to take it out, though, is attack it whenever it stomps. Whenever it stomps, it stays still for a second or two. That gives you time to blast it. Another good idea would be to use a weapon that ignores armor if you don't have some kind of super good overclock overclock. An example would be the sludge pump, which slows down the dreadnought, does damage even if you shoot it in the face, which normally would be immune. The Collet wave cooker with a contagion transmitter, also really good if you combine it with the sludge pump. And of course, you've got the engineer's shard diffractor. All of those can do damage to the dreadnought without having to specifically hit its weak point. An easy way to take down a dreadnought if you don't have access to some like insanely good overclock. Alright though, let's go ahead and move on into the Elite Deep Dive, which is going to occur in the radioactive exclusion zone. This is a problem because the rocks here are very tough. They take 3 strikes of a pick to break through, and well, that means you're either going to want to have the Rocky Mountain beer before you go in, or you're going to want to bring a driller because it will be a pain otherwise. Mission 1 has a difficulty of hazard 4.5. Objectives are to collect 7 quarks and 2 alien eggs. One of the alien eggs will create a swarm. There's also a mutator in effect, which is regenerative bugs, which means if a bug isn't damaged for 3 seconds in a row, it will begin to regenerate its own health at a rate of 5% of its total health per second until it is fully healed, though damage will interrupt the effect. Now, if you're thinking, wow, I feel like I heard this mission before, that's because it's basically a mirror of Mission 3 of the standard deep dive, except now you're in hazard 4.5, which means it's quite a bit more dangerous. Enemies can much more easily take advantage of regenerative bugs because they are deadlier, they are in larger numbers, you're going to run away from them more, and it's going to overwhelm the turrets of your mine head a lot more easily. The main thing you need to do here is just get the quarks and the egg and get out of here as quickly as possible. The longer you stay, the worse it's going to get. If you see Nitra along the way, sure, grab it, but do not go and explore for Nitra at the cost of not grabbing more quarks. If you feel comfortable with the game, you can, of course, once you hit the button and send the rocket off and wait for the drop pod to explore the remainder of the map in that time and try to get whatever Nitra you can, but don't dilly-dally because you will invite a large quantity of enemies to appear and you'll probably wind up spending more ammo than you wind up gaining looking for the Nitra. Let's go ahead and continue on to Mission 2 though. This is the hard mission of the 3. Difficulty is raised to hazard 5. Objectives are to refine liquid morkite, so this is on-site refinement. You'll also need to collect 2 alien eggs. One will generate a swarm, but the big catch is that there's a mutator in effect, and it is low oxygen. What this means is you've got a 1-minute oxygen tank on your character, and before the minute is up, you gotta go find oxygen, otherwise you take a huge amount of suffocation damage. The way that you refill your oxygen, you'll either need to go back to the refinery to refill your oxygen, or any of the ammo pods you call in, they will also give you oxygen. So the big challenge with this mission is that the Earth, once again, in the radioactive exclusion zone, the rocks take 3 strokes of a pick to break down, and you've got the oxygen, you got to constantly go back. It drags the mission out. It takes way longer. The longer this mission lasts, the more waves of enemies, hazard 5 enemies, the game can send at you. And while there is a ton of nitro, which is nice, especially in the form of the loot bugs, you could just fight so many enemies that they can just bankrupt you on ammo because there's just so many of them. So what's really going to help you here is being a driller, because then once you locate the morkite wells and call the pump jack on them, you can just drill in a straight line to them and build the pipes right through the hole that you drilled, that rock tunnel with the drills. So that's what you should do. Also, I do recommend spreading out the ammo pods, and do not defend against the waves near the refinery. The refinery is bad terrain and it works better for the bugs. So put your first ammo pod somewhere flat, somewhere that you can fight around, and then after that, spread out your ammo pods a bit so that you don't have to come all the way back to the building, the refinery, in order to get your oxygen back. That will help an absolute ton. Alright though, let's finish strong. This is Mission 3, the final mission. Difficulty's up to hazard 5.5, and your objectives will be to collect 250 morkite, and you have to kill a dreadnought. It'll specifically be the Glyphid Dreadnought. To make matters worse though, you've got some mutators to complicate things. You got Swarmageddon. That means you'll constantly be attacked by swarmers throughout the whole experience, but in return you get rich atmosphere, which makes you run 50% faster, and that is absolutely huge. huge. It's going to let you outrun the enemies, going to let you kite the enemies, like run, shoot, run, shoot. It should reduce the amount of damage you take a lot. So you mainly want to try to fight the enemies out in the open, and preferably not so much in the tunnels, because in the tunnels you can't really use that rich atmosphere as much to your advantage. Overall, this mission really isn't that complicated. It's basically just like a harder mining expedition plus a boss, and the reason for that is because there aren't any fancy tricks going on here aside from the swarmers, but you can deal with it. The only thing that could really go wrong in this mission is that you take too long. The longer you take, the more enemies you fight, the more you risk running out of ammo. So just make sure you stay on task. Room, tunnel, tunnel. Go into each area, grab all the stuff, and leave. If at any moment you start scratching your chin like, what do I do next? Stay on task. Open up your map and just move on to the next logical location. Stay on task and you won't run out of ammo. Now, when you get to the boss, the Glyphid Dreadnought, you're actually in a really good spot because the Dreadnought has an awful battlefield for it. Why is it awful? It's really wide and open. You can just run everywhere you want with the rich atmosphere, and that's a problem for the Dreadnought because the Dreadnought really needs to get into melee combat with you to really do some damage with its stomp, but it's very hard to do with how wide the battlefield is, plus the rich atmosphere. If you want to take it down efficiently and you don't have some insane overclock, just use weapons that ignore armor. So your sludge pump and your Colette wave cooker, when combined, that does a lot of damage to this Dreadnought, and you don't have to hit its weak point. Also, if you're an engineer, consider bringing the Shard Diffractor secondary weapon, another weapon that does not have to hit the Dreadnought in the weak point to do damage to it. Do that and you shouldn't have any trouble bringing this Dreadnought down. And once you do that, you just mop up the Morkite and it's in the bag. Overall, this is not the worst of missions. Oh yeah, one last piece of advice real fast. When you are extracting and returning to the drop pod, be careful because as you call in the ammo pods, they might put holes in floors above you. And as you're retreating, running, especially with the rich atmosphere, you might fall in through one of these holes that were created by the ammo pod coming through and send yourself back down a floor or two. Just something to be aware of. Anyways, let's move into the conclusion where I tell you which dwarves are going to be effective in each of the dives. So for the deep dive, I'm going to say Engineer and Scout MVP. You mainly need to kind of search for resources in this deep dive, and the Scout and the Engineer do that really, really well because the Scout can find things and then the Engineer can shoot a platform up there if the Scout can't reach it. In particular, though, the Engineer is going to be really good at sabotage because the turrets help you defend the hacking pods, and then the turrets help you thin out the enemies that the Caretaker summons. And once the various enemies defending the Caretaker are down, well, the Caretaker is actually nearly defenseless. In addition to that, the Shard Diffractor is both good against the Caretaker and any of the Glyphid bosses that you encounter along the way. The Scout now is also going to be good against the Caretaker because it doesn't matter which of the eyes open up, the Scout is just so fast with the grappling hook, he'll be able to grapple right over and put some damage on the Caretaker. The Scout is going to be able to just race through the second deep dive and begin finding all of those Quarks, and when you've got to look for Morkite, it's so much easier when you got someone who can just fly through the level and light things up with the flare gun. It's just going to let you find things so much more easily, and if it's out of your reach, well, what do you know? You've got your handy-dandy Engineer ready to give you that platform so that you can do it as quickly and efficiently as possible. Now, for the Elite Deep Dive, I'm going to recommend the Driller Engineer as MVP. The Driller is super good because you're in the radioactive exclusion zone. Remember, it takes 3 strikes with your pick in order to break through the heavy-duty rock there, but not for the Driller. He just swims right through it like it's any other substance with his drills. That's going to be really nice for drilling through the Quarks. It's going to be super extra nice in the second mission where you got to lay down the pipes to pump the Morkite because you can just drill these tunnels and then you can just put the pipes right through the tunnels. It'll make your oxygen so much more efficient when you can just go in a straight line from A to B. You could design your Driller to either be anti-dreadnought if you're worried about the Glyphid Dreadnought at the end, go sludge pump and Colette wave cooker with the contagion transmitter, or you can go flamethrower or a cryo cannon. If you just want to be more anti-swarm or anti-general enemies, it's really flexible right there, whichever you think is more of a concern. The engineer, on the other hand, is just great in defensive missions. You do a lot of waiting around in the first two missions, so having those turrets on Overwatch is a really, really big deal. The turrets are also really good at killing the swarmers, and the swarm are getting very, very ammo efficient. And of course, the shard diffractor is great against the Glyphid Dreadnought. There's also the grenades. The lure grenades are great in a panic situation. You just need to get the Glyphids off of you. And there can be tunnel battles, especially in the 3rd Elite Deep Dive. If you get caught in a tunnel, you can use the proximity mines to block off both of the tunnels. The Glyphids take so much damage having to pass through the proximity mines, so it's really up to you. Anyways, that is going to be that. Hope you enjoyed this Deep Dive and Elite Deep Dive guide. Hope you get all of those Matrix cores. Remember, if you want to see me do these live, catch me on Twitch at GetGoodFox. But anyways, till next time, like the video if it was entertaining, subscribe for future Deep Rock Galactic content, and of course, remember that you don't have to be good to get good.